Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of our Velocity Sellers Podcast. I am your host, Velocity Pete. Today I've got I wore my matching, very branded Velocity apparel. We've got a special guest for you today. We've got Burak Yolga. He is the co-founder and CEO of ForceGet Supply Chain Logistics. Burak, thanks for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to have you here to talk about a couple different things that we've got on the docket today. But first, I'd love to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for having me, man. I'm very excited to be here today. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey. I lived in China 8 years, from 2011 to 2019. I did a lot of sourcing, back then. This kind of like sourcing channels, YouTube channels were not that popular. So I was like, doing lots of sourcing and stuff. And, I really didn't share anything. And I wish I started back then, my social channels and stuff. I could have been like more popular today. But what we were doing is like basically we've been working with lots of large Amazon and both Amazon and e-commerce sellers. We love to work with omni-channel people like companies, brands to help with their international shipments, fulfillments, reimbursements. But more importantly, we have a special in-house software where we show a lot of data to sellers where they can track their shipments online, understand their landing costs, Amazon fulfillment centers, checking time. As you know, inventory management is the key. We're going to talk about today FBA fees. It's all about forecasting. It's all about managing your inventory correct, not being out of inventory or not being too high in the inventory side. As you know, this year and last year, lots of aggregators, they had a lot of problems due to the high inventory, like unnecessary stock that they imported or they purchased it. Unfortunately, most of them are out of business. So it's really an interesting day to talk about optimization of the inventory, cash flow, obviously, and be profitable. It's not anymore a thing that to be 8-figure, 9-figure sellers about being whether you're profitable or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of Amazon sellers and a lot of Amazon, LinkedIn gurus and all those people are having a lot of comments and a lot to say about a lot of these fees that are coming with as 2024 rolls on, as these new inbound placement fees come in, new FBA fees, just all of that stuff. I want to get a little bit of kind of what you're seeing from a logistics point of view. What is happening? Like, what has changed in the past couple of years? I know before we were talking about the different percentages that FBA takes from the sellers. Like, what has changed there, and what is kind of causing all of these issues, and really just kind of what's prompting Amazon to do this?
Let's talk with numbers. 2024, roughly, we know that we all feel inflation, right? It doesn't matter where you live in the world. Excuse me, but when you look at the numbers in 2018, 2019, Amazon would have taken probably 19 to 20% of your sales price. So if you're selling a product, $100 product, they will take 20% of that, includes PPC budget, FBA fees, referral fees, and everything. Now roughly it's 45%. So it's a huge increase.
Huge.
You can actually see this increase, how much they're taking it from their annual reports. In 2019, they were making loss. Today, they're making a lot of money. So that's like a big issue with the third-party sellers. But unfortunately, a lot of smaller size, mid-size of sellers, unfortunately, cannot really keep up with all these new changes. And then they change something, then they're like, we postpone it. Then they're like, we postpone it again. They just announced something yesterday. This, placement fees that they're going to start charging 1st of April. They postponed it to 1st of May. Now they postpone under 15 days. So brands can understand actually what is their cost. So what has changed is, after COVID, a lot of people, they start buying things online. And Amazon's fulfillment centers were designed to keep products in the long term. They will ship out for their normal demand. As soon as the demand went up 5% online, then Amazon started to kick out those longer term storage products out of 3PL. So Amazon will be like, we want to be only a fulfillment center. We don't want to be a long-term storage facility. Then they start building additional facilities because demand was still very high for the online products. They started the new program AWD, Amazon Warehouse Distributions. Once That was done, and that Amazon now is ready to receive more products, more sellers. Boom. Online sales go down. Retailers are back. So Amazon's like, we spent so much money. It's going to be a big loss. How are we going to recover this money? There we go. We charge the third-party sellers. So that was their strategy. Unfortunately, they get upset. Lots of sellers, they got really upset about these extra fees and everything. They keep increasing. And still the customer service not that great. I would like lots of sellers would understand like, hey, okay, you're charging extra, but at least you're giving me good customer service. Their platform for the seller side is also not getting any better, as well as the customer service, unfortunately. So many companies get affected. Amazon keep increasing the rates, the fees for the sellers. As all of you know, like they don't want to lose the customer.
Yeah.
For them, the most important is the customer. But without sellers, like there are a lot of rumors that Amazon is going to be like a Wish.com, like they're going to disappear. But we keep seeing that they do a lot of profits. So it's a big conflict between the annual report and they did amazing.
Yeah,
the first quarter report.
I was going to say their annual, not annual, but their quarterly report was phenomenal. And all the same thing, all those gurus are saying, oh, like be careful, Amazon's earnings report's going to be super high and they're going to keep going up. So it's good to see that the platform that we work with is doing well, which is nice. But it's unfortunately at the cost of some of the sellers that, like you said, the middle sellers that are smaller companies that just can't really keep up with. They can't afford to give away 40% of their profits to FBA. So that is a shame. What I've been seeing though is they, like you said, they have been hearing and understanding a lot of our complaints and a lot of the people that are saying, hey, this is ridiculous. They moved that deadline for the placement fees, the start of that to, I want to say May 15th, right? And they also, for the low inventory fees, I just saw that they're going to credit you back now instead of just crediting you for April. They're going to credit you, same thing. They're going to credit you up till May 14th. So that's pretty exciting. It's better than nothing, I guess. I'll take it. I just wish that they wouldn't put so much of this pressure on us, especially when we know that from a business point of view, it makes sense. They want to make as most money as possible. They want to have as much revenue as they possibly can. But it seems like they're going to be weeding out a lot of their weaker sellers that still make them money, but not as much as, say, Nike or the giant brands that are doing millions and millions of volume a month. So it's just interesting to see kind of what they're doing
what
there.
is also like, what is very difficult right now is if I'm going to launch a new product, I think it's very hard for me to calculate the FBA fees. In the past, it would be like, it's 35% or 32%, 33%. But now you don't even know, how much is Amazon going to charge you for the product that you're selling? So how can you really calculate whether, you'll be like selling or not that product, if it's going to be profitable or not? How would you do that?
Yeah, that's really where it comes up. Like, how do you even factor this in? Because am I going to be charged for this fee? Am I not going to be charged for this fee? And like I said, I feel like most sellers are not going to be able to say, I can eat 40% of my margin and give it to Amazon and still be profitable. Because then you got to factor in cost of goods, you got to factor in your shipping, everything else that goes into making a product and selling it online, whether it be Amazon or Shopify or anywhere really. I feel like they're not going to be able to account for all of that, and it's going to hurt Amazon a little bit when a lot of these people drop off.
Absolutely.
So,
and what we see is also, I was talking to a couple of friends, and they're like, the first page used to be top 3-4 products like sponsor. Now, pretty much the first page is entirely sponsored products. So it's kind of losing its organic value. What's funny thing is like when I was talking to my friend, he wants to buy a product, and then we were looking at it together. I said like, don't buy that. It's advertised. He's like, what do you mean? So actually regular shoppers, they don't really know, most of them, they don't really know what is advertised, which one is like organic. They don't really care. They go to the first page. Most of the people, they check out either first page or second page, right? And then the sellers are trying to bid the high. So that's where Amazon gets the money actually. So a lot of people, they don't really know like what is the organic, what is the advertisement product.
Yeah. And then that comes in with Amazon not letting you have a higher price on other platforms, a lower price on other platforms. Like they need to be the lowest price or else they're taking your listing down or they're suspending you. So that really, again, makes it kind of hard for you to be profitable when you can't have a lower price somewhere else that would be less of a charge to you. Like if Shopify is taking 30% of your profits, whereas Amazon now is taking, like you said, 40 to 45. You can afford to have your price lower on Shopify, but if you make it lower on Shopify, you have to make it lower on Amazon, because then Amazon will find out, they'll scrape their systems, and they'll see, and they'll take you down. So just all of that coming together really seems like they want to make more money at the expense of their sellers. And I know we're all here to make money, which is fine, but it seems like they're hurting their biggest asset, which is these third-party sellers. So it's a shame. It's a shame to see that.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then, we also see, that's one thing that I time to time I like to talk about is not only we're talking about everything after the products are entered the FBA facilities, right? But there are so many steps that we should be concerned about: the production time, choosing the supplier, the cost of manufacturing, international shipments. And most of our sellers now, they're talking about, because it makes sense to have a buffer stock in a 3PL. Why? Because Amazon is also charging you for low inventory fee, which is they're looking at your sales history and they're asking you to have the sweet spot of 30 days and 90 days. 30 days to 75 days, let's say, inventory average, whatever you're selling, to keep it in their fulfillment centers. So that was something that a lot of people that they were like really get upset about. Number one, what if you're exiting a product? Now they actually, what if it's the end of the cycle? In the announcement yesterday, they mentioned if you're selling last 20 days less than 7 units, so it means like if you are selling if your BSR is like low, then they're not going to charge you this fee. It means that that's the end of the life cycle. And they did another announcement. So for the seasonal product, everybody's like, so how am I supposed to sell a seasonal product if it is selling only 3 months? I cannot really keep inventory the entire year for a Christmas product or Mother's Day product, right?
Yeah.
And then Amazon like come up with the idea. So it's good that they're listening, but then I think they're making more complicated. And most of the time, a lot of companies, they're having difficulty about liquidation, like money problems, because interest rates are higher. So even if they want to import more products, or even if they want to source more product, then Amazon pays you later because checking times are longer. We talked about off the record about the Suez Channel, the Red Sea issue, Panama Channel. So especially if you're a seller in Europe, your product might be going to Europe to the destination port 30 days later than 6 months ago, versus if you're shipping a product the East Coast of United States, then you have roughly 30 to 45 days additional delay, unless that carrier is paying $45 million to pass through the Panama Channel. So it's not only like Amazon, but then sellers are like, I think, dealing with a lot of other supply chain issues, which Amazon thinks that their Amazon Global Logistics and AWS is the solution, but there are a lot of also doubts about that.
Yeah. I like the sound of Amazon Warehouse Distribution and Amazon Global Logistics when you use them together. I know you get a little bit of a fee waive if you use them both at the same time, and you're kind of exempt from some of the other fees that they're adding, which is really nice to hear that if you use our services and you pay us more money, we'll waive these fees. But it also, thinking from like a logical point of view, it makes sense to want to, in my opinion, to want to streamline everything. And why not use Amazon as your 3PL? They're the king of global logistics. I mean, it makes sense. So, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on kind of them giving you that discount on using them together.
I mean, in theory, every program Amazon launches is great. Like, they show this, and then last year we actually had a booth in Accelerate in 2023. We're going to also have a booth in 2024. We are the only independent supply chain international logistic company invited to Accelerate. And their main opening ceremony, the opening speech was about supply chain. So that's, in theory, everything's great. But when it comes to reality, I see some like downside. I see some like disadvantages of using that. Number one, Amazon knows your supplier. Number two, you don't have any control when they're gonna really book the shipment, when they're gonna pick up. So basically, even if they say you have the tracking and this and that, but you don't really know which vessel they're gonna use, the customer service is still overseas. We see that a lot of delays. They sometimes lose the containers. So if you're really tight with your lead times, I don't think Amazon Global Logistics is good. If you have enough time to ship the product, deliver to like Amazon, a normal freight forwarder would deliver maybe in 35 to 40 days versus Amazon delivers sometimes 60 to 70 days. And obviously, if they delay, they're not going to be like, oh, okay, sorry, you run out of inventory because of us. Let's us like compensate you. They're not going to say that. They never do that. Same thing with Amazon warehouse distributions. I think the idea is deliver everything in one location. We're going to do auto replenishment for you. But one risk that I see, people should never enable auto replenishment because you never really know when Amazon is going to send them. And if they send a lot of inventory to FBA on behalf of you, obviously they're charging a lot of money for the fulfillment fees, storage fees. So it's going to be for their own benefit. So I think sellers should be really careful when they enable those auto replenishments. Basically what Amazon is saying is, when you go on lower inventory FBA, we're going to send the buffer stock from our AWD. But the reality is how well it's going to be done, how long it's going to really take to distribute that. You don't have any control. If you have something happens, there's a delay, then you need to talk to their customer support, which is overseas. They have no idea what's going on in the actual physical locations. Once they get you an answer, it's going to take 4 to 5 days. They're like, let me open a ticket. So basically, you open a ticket to seller support, who's overseas, 10 hours behind you. By the time they open a case to that fulfillment center, by the time that fulfillment center send an internal message to that overseas office, by the time they send you a message, it takes like 3 to 4 days. And then, God forbid, you run out of inventory. You need to deactivate a coupon, or maybe you need to decrease your PPC budget or your bid. But how can you really make a decision? So Amazon, Amazon Global Logistics and AWD is great in theory, but you really need to understand where and how you'll be using them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, hey, I'm going to do this. We were talking just recently on another logistics episode with people on our team about like it doesn't, you might be profitable for a little bit, but is that long-term sustainability? Like, can you maintain this level of production that you're using with AGL? And are you profitable at a SKU level? Like, is each one of your SKUs technically profitable? If you're using it, if you're using AGL for it, if you're doing big enough shipments, all these factors that go into it are I think what maybe some people get tripped up with, and maybe what is kind of underlying using all of these services, kind of like you said, where sure, like in theory, yes, everything is awesome. Everything works super great. It's from one place to the other. Amazon handles it. They bring it to their warehouse. They send it into FBA. You're good to go. You'd never run out of stock ever. But then, like you said, if there's going to be issues, it's just how the world works. And so you're going to run into these things, and that's going to say, okay, well, does this still make sense? Like, did my actual 3PL before Amazon, did they run into these issues? Was this something that they, caused? And is that something that we saw with them? And it's kind of a game of, I don't want to say chance, but because there's a lot you can measure and a lot you can check out. I think
a lot of companies will test it out, and see if it's gonna work for them or not. For some people, it's gonna maybe work. Some people it will not. But a lot of companies, they think that under new service from Amazon, we don't know how the customer service is gonna be. We don't know how everything will look like in a real life versus in the theory that what Amazon is like offering them.
Yeah. Well, sticking with this topic, actually, I'd love to kind of talk more about helping the seller and minimizing shipping costs. So do you have any tips for Amazon sellers, and maybe, again, Shopify, Walmart, primarily Amazon, but if they're on the other channels, awesome too. What are some ways Amazon sellers can really minimize their shipping costs and go about being more profitable in this day and age when Amazon is going to be taking a lot of your margin?
It's a really interesting question because in our company, we are tracking all of our shipments and all of our customer shipments. So when you create a shipment, when Amazon distributes them to 5 or 7 different locations, you can maybe keep a buffer stock in California and 3PL in Los Angeles. And then you can see that a shipping cost from China to California, let's say per kilogram, $1. And versus shipping to East Coast, let's say $1.3. So basically, if you're shipping 1,000 kilogram for the West Coast, you pay $1,000. In the East Coast, you pay $1,300. So the price difference is $300. But if when you create a shipment from your 3PL in LA to, whatever the location Amazon assigns you, they say 2 out of 5 will go to West Coast, others go to East Coast. And then eventually, when you're shipping using either Amazon LTL carrier or UPS, SPD, your maybe shipping cost in total will be $2,000. But eventually, it really is important to see how many percent of your shipments are going to the East Coast when Amazon assigns you. So the last mile delivery, a lot of sellers, they don't really understand the fact that it's just a lot of additional cost for their landing. So what I'm trying to say is, so maybe if people are looking at their data, instead of keeping their inventory in the West Coast, maybe they should be shipping to the East Coast. Because from $300 difference, if you keep that, that 3 shipments going to the East Coast, if you had an inventory in New Jersey, then maybe your total local landing final delivery cost is like $1,000 from East Coast for those 5 locations. But from West Coast, it was $2,000. So in the long term, you may be spending $300 less to ship it to West Coast, but that last mile delivery will be more expensive, $1,000 if you distribute them from the West Coast to East Coast. So in total, you'll be still spending $700 more to keep the inventory in the West Coast and then shipping everything to the East Coast. So we are working on different scenarios in our company to show this information to our customers to make a better decision. So people should really look at where their final inventory is sent by Amazon. Is it mostly going to the East Coast or West Coast? Because we have a customer, most of the time, whenever they create a shipment, it goes to Florida, Kansas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, versus some of them are going to smaller parties, going to California and Texas. So, and this customer has been keep sending their goods to the West Coast. We're like, wait a second, you should actually start shipping to East Coast. Yes, maybe the first shipment to East Coast is maybe more expensive, 30%, but then last mile deliveries are maybe 70% cheaper. So at the end, you're making 40% profit in those margins,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean,
and if nobody really look at the data, it's very hard to see that in the sum up part.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that this kind of allowing us to, waiving the fee if you send it to multiple places, also kind of plays in that a little bit, like Amazon allowing us to send it out to different fulfillment centers and making that more of a, hey, here's your reward for doing that. You don't get charged these inbound placement fees. That definitely would play a part, I think, in helping you be more profitable. I'm sure you might pay more, and that's again what we talked a little bit about with my logistics team, and just saying, hey, maybe you do spend more per item on shipping, but now you don't incur these other fees, and you're giving less to FBA, and overall it is cheaper. Doing that.
So. A lot of sellers are confused about this. That's the problem, because Amazon's numbers even don't make sense right now because they don't even know what will be the total cost. And I mean, you're right. Eventually everybody needs to make their calculations. But there's something also interesting because we had a scenario. We had a case study that one of our customer used Amazon's idea, ship it to one location, and then after that, in the inventory report, we see that his shipment actually has been distributed to 30 places. So basically what Amazon was telling him, hey, ship it to this one location, then I'm not going to distribute them to the West Coast, which they did it. So in theory, I don't want to blame any parties because I'm not 100% sure. But then why would Amazon ask them to send it to one place and then distribute to really far locations? Because then your product is not 100% completely checked in. So basically, they're charging you more to ship it to one location, but then they distribute to many smaller locations. So basically, it's 180 degrees different than what they are telling you.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, no comment.
to quote Brian, our logistics guy who's been on the show before, he was saying it was very generous of Amazon to allow sellers to partake in the fee of sending out the different orders and different packages to different fulfillment centers. Super kind of them to let to charge us for that. So just very, very interesting stuff. It kind of seems like they're falling into the idea of profit over people. I know they've always been obviously a for-profit company. They're not here to boost sellers. They're here to say, hey, like, you want to use our network, we're going to charge you. But it's getting to the point where it just seems like it's a little much. It seems like this isn't super necessary. It seems like I don't know if they're trying to compete with things like we talked about TikTok Shop and Temu, like Wish.com repeats, and I don't know if this is the way to compete with them, because then people are going to say, well, I'm not making as much money on Amazon. Maybe I can make more on TikTok Shop, which is a crazy phenomenon that might not be around for too much longer. After I know President Joe just signed something not too long ago that almost put the ban into action. But still, you makes you think, what is Amazon? I think yes, and that's maybe because I work in the space. But is Amazon really going to be the dominant e-com site in 10 years?
I think they're going a little bit still to the monopoly, in my opinion. And everybody thinks about the same thing about the fees and everything. But I think we should look at this from the Amazon side. Probably they're thinking, we invested in billions of dollars in this fulfillment centers, operations, SOPs, technology. There's so many things, probably robotic technologies, AI softwares, that they really invested billions of dollars, and they're like, why would we want other companies to come and deliver on behalf of us? Or like, why would we charge so less? So maybe that's what they think. Obviously, there are so many small businesses that are affected. But when you look at TikTok, I don't really think, we hear some success stories, but also I hear a lot of not success stories. What I mean with that is, I don't have a TikTok, so I don't really know what people are doing in TikTok. I know that I have friends they're hanging in TikTok, but I don't think their intention is go there to buy a product. But Amazon is the world's strongest, or like a largest search engine. I think number 2 or number 3. Google, Amazon, YouTube, they're changing I think between.
I think it goes back and forth, but it's up there.
Yeah, back and forth. But
crazy.
That's the thing. Like people go to Amazon not to watch, I don't know, people dancing or like cooking videos or
TikTok
like
crap,
cool stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure TikTok has some good motivational, I don't know, videos or something, which I like to watch also sometimes. Not on TikTok, but other places. Long story short, what's the intention of those people? I think TikTok created a great audience to go out, hang out every day there. Then they're using this audience to probably make like a buyer, and then they want the sellers to come to work there. But they do not have any fulfillment set up. They do not have any 2 days, 3 days shipping. They do not have the right SOPs. They don't know what is the return rate is going to be. So I hear like some people like boost their brands and they make some like this crazy couple of products, but I don't think it's sustainable. Like eventually, I might be wrong, but what I'm trying to say is Amazon has built this entire supply chain process. They spent maybe 10 to 12 years to make it perfect right now. They're making even much better every day. But now you're saying that just because they're like 200 million viewers, we will like just get Amazon's share. I don't believe that's really possible. Even Walmart.com, they have so much still things to do. Like they have much more, like they have so many trucks, they have so many fulfillment centers, but the buyers who are going to Amazon they feel safe. Like, because they know that whatever they buy, they can return back in 30 days. The customer service, if the product is not delivered, Amazon is going to refund. It doesn't really matter. Amazon loves to keep their customer happy. And I don't think other marketplaces will be as dominant as Amazon one day. I mean, it looks like the other marketplaces are taking like shares from Amazon, but Amazon still has plus 50, plus 55% in the online channels. And I think like Temu, Shein, AliExpress has been there always, like lost several years, even like a decade, 2 decades. I don't really think that TikTok Shop is going to be, they can ever be Amazon, like, because basically the trust Amazon has is just so much. And people go to Amazon, they have the intention to buy. Like, I never go to Amazon like, hey, I'm bored, let me watch some pictures.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
on an Amazon Live, or like on the app, they have like the Inspire page, which is kind of like Amazon's attempt at doing TikTok almost, where they'll have creators do different videos and stuff like that, which is no, I don't go on there like I would go on.
Right.
I don't have TikTok either.
Some people do, but
yeah.
mostly you would go to buy. You're looking for something for Amazon.
Mhm.
That's the intention.
Yeah.
So most of the people, they go to Amazon, it converts.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who they buy from, but as a buyer perspective, I think 60 to 65% and 80% of people, they do mobile shopping, 85% maybe. And they made it so easy. I mean, Shopify, definitely sellers are looking to go omni-channel. Like Amazon says, especially if you sell Amazon US, they want to expand in Canada, UK, Europe. We work with Amazon Canada, we work with Amazon Europe and UK to help sellers to expand those marketplaces because they want additional revenue. And a lot of sellers, they also want to start selling on Shopify. But you mentioned, the Amazon has this crazy price policy for the brands. So they try to rebrand, maybe they want to sell other different brands. I don't know. Companies are looking for options. But I think in the long term, if you ask me who's going to be Amazon's direct competitors, Walmart and Shopify. Like I think Walmart has the setup in the supply chain, deliveries, fulfillment centers, trucks, but they don't have enough traffic to their website, which they have incredible database that they're probably trying to push people towards their website. Shopify, they have really good traffic. They are working on better conversion. Now you can use you can save your credit card and everything. They want to they want to increase the add to cart rate. They want to increase their checkout rates. Shopify doing a lot of great things, but then they don't have the enough fulfillment, like one centralized solution. Shopify sellers' biggest issue is they need to find a fulfillment center, sort of like a FBM. So Amazon has both traffic that Walmart don't have and fulfillment centers, and Amazon has the conversion that Shopify does not have. So it's like really sweet spot in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I know a lot of people probably thought that and this is before my time, not to age myself, but I'm sure when Wish.com was around, like they thought, oh, like are other e-com sites gonna be able to compete with these super low prices of Wish? And obviously most of that stuff was not real, kind of like a scam. And I think that's the same thing with Temu. I think, and I to be honest with you, was shocked to see that Temu had enough of a budget to make a Super Bowl ad so quickly. Like I feel like they kind of came out of nowhere. This is sort of the last topic I wanted to get into with you, was just looking at some of these other places, like maybe like TikTok Shop and like Temu. Are those viable options for sellers? Should they be looking into putting their products on some of this stuff? And really just like what is sort of the impact on global e-com because of places like Shein, who, by the way, I've heard they have pretty good customer service compared to Amazon. They have a decent, they're kind of almost neck and neck with them as far as returns and like the try-on policy goes. But what's the global effect on e-com for like TikTok Shop, Temu, Shein, all the other Amazon
like Shein is
competitors?
More about like apparels, like textile products, not everything. And Temu is, I don't think any like US-based seller will want to sell on Temu because most of those products are really low and cheap surplus. Like that's the issue. I think that's how Temu came up with the idea, because when I lived in China between 2011 and 2019, the way of international business was you would go buy a product from a factory as a local Chinese trade company. You would export to an importer, let's say in the United States. Then that importer would sell the product to the third party or a retailer. Then they would sell it to customer, or they would post it online. And then the Amazon sellers start going buy directly from the factories. Factories start selling online directly. So they don't even need the buyers in here. So the way of doing international business has changed, which most of the 65 to 70% of largest sellers on Amazon US is sellers from China. So basically they produce so much, and because of the high inflation, the demand is lower now in the world. And China needs to keep their GDP their growth sustainable, which was double digits 10 years ago, like, 11%, 12%, they used to grow. So now it's about 3 to 4%. So even that growth is not 100% real. That's a different topic. But long story short is they're trying to keep up with their domestic growth. So that's why they need to keep producing the same amount. But if the world doesn't buy it, they still want to export it. So that's why they did this D2C, the crazy door-to-door delivery option, which is Temu, because they have so much product that's sitting in the factories, in the trade companies, that they cannot sell it because no one really have overseas a demand for that. Like a company from Germany, Canada, Netherlands, they don't want to buy anymore 5 containers in a month. They only buy two containers because money is too expensive, as well as their customers, they don't have enough demand. Imagine you're a family of 3 kids, you were making $8,000, maybe $4,000, both parents, and then the inflation now 30% in last 2 years, or maybe like 20%. We see their real numbers are, I don't know, but I feel that way. In my supermarket or gas and all, I go gas station, I get my coffee, I pay 20% more than last year. So what I see is people cannot afford anymore to buy that many. So basically they go either buy like from a very cheap sources, Temu, etc., or they don't buy it. So like that's the thing right now. What we see is most of the end users, like consumer, they don't have enough income to cover that cost. So basically the factories are like, okay, what we're gonna do with all this product? Let us sell that. It's better than losing the money. So they basically sell it maybe cost to cost. So that's how they actually make that so cheap, these products. It's not something specially made for it. It's a overstock most of the time.
See, I didn't realize that. I thought it was, maybe I kind of had an idea that maybe it was the manufacturers, because how else would they be able to get it so cheap? But I didn't have the clear understanding like that of this is how it's cheap.
Right.
My family does there's a couple different names for like a white elephant or like a Yankee swap every year where like you don't know what the gift is. And my mother this year bought something from Temu, and I was like, oh my God, like, what are you doing, Mom? But it makes sense. And the product was meh, but yeah, that's just what it is. Just what it is. So, but yeah,
it's marketing,
Yeah. And it's really just, how do you think this is all? So you mentioned earlier, like sometimes some of these guys are a little chipping away at Amazon's share of the e-com space. Do you think that'll increase as time goes on? Do you think that'll be a problem?
I think like people like it buy from your buyer perspective, like let's say your mom, she probably bought something less than $20 or $30 worth of product. If you want to buy something worth of $80 or $100, you don't want to risk it. So that's where it's going to affect the most, I think, to certain amount of point, like $20, $25 maybe range, $15. People don't want to buy a 6-pack of socks from Amazon for $24.99. They go buy from Temu $8.99. If it's delivered in 2 weeks, you're not in the rush to receive your socks. And even some people are like, oh wow, it's even delivered. People get happy. Versus they know that it's going to be delivered the next day with Amazon, but you're not that much in the rush, You're buying kids product, and I have a friend that he bought like a swimsuit for his kids, like a 3-pack for $7, and he was telling me like it's $50 in here. But it's like really bad for actual importers. People pay their tax and duties. American businesses doesn't matter, like overseas, it's really bad for them because eventually they have employees in here, they have the payroll. So it's a big issue. And that money never stays in the US. It goes back to the factories overseas. It doesn't have to be China, it could be anywhere. So I think it should be still, like, it's kind of, I think I have a little bit of a traditional way of doing business, so it kind of gets me upset a little bit because I know so many great importers, it's affected. They're like, our business is down 50% because nobody really wants to buy. Again, like, I have a friend, he ordered a lot of kids product from India. They have a warehouse, they have 40 people, and it says our business is 40% down. So that's like a really bad effect, and not really consumers don't really think that way. They're like, because of the inflation, bad economy, they're like, hey, I need to buy cheap. So, I don't know. It depends on where you're looking at this situation. So I sometimes get too rational. sometimes I get too emotional about the situation, and I think we kind of try to cover in this podcast as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see, not to get political, but it'll be interesting to see how November plays out and see if we can, hopefully, knock on wood, whoever wins, turn this inflation around a little bit, because it is a problem. It is for every e-com site, for every person in the country, in the world, really feeling this. Like you said, I'm not really a big coffee drinker, but my grocery bill is a lot higher than what it was last year. So it's just as simple as saying, can I, afford to be buying things on Amazon that I maybe don't need as compared to maybe buying my groceries? So something to think about, that it all kind of comes back and ties in together there. So again, we'll just have to see how the rest of the year plays out and how Amazon responds to it. If they add any more fees, if they decrease any fees, if they hear enough from sellers that says, hey, I can't afford this anymore, I have to jump ship. If enough people say that, maybe they will go back, say, okay, our bad. But I don't know if that's super likely. But fingers crossed, people can dream.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Well, Burak, this was a great episode. It's phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about all these different topics related to e-com and the shipping world. I'll definitely have to have you back on for another couple of topics and to just go more into a lot of this stuff. But this was a great first episode between you and I. So again, I really just want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for watching, and tune in next week where we will have the three Muskebeards back, me, Eric, and Brian, to talk more about these individual fees and kind of how you as a seller can stay afloat in the sea of new changes and new fees that Amazon is rolling out. So that'll be next week's episode. Tune in to hear about how you can stay profitable amidst these new changes. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Velocity Pete, and like I said, we'll see you next week.